Welcome back, Richard. It is good to see you to continue our conversation about education.
Yeah, this is one of those tricky topics because we don't want to be overly critical, but yet we have to sort of lay out what everybody's dealing with.
Mhm.
I mean it in a critical way, but these are the factors, the issues that we're dealing with.
Right.
So with that in mind, um, if you're a teacher or an administrator or a counselor or a librarian, I feel especially bad about the librarians. These are typically librarians are gentle people whose heart is in the right place, and they love books and they love reading. Man, they have really been threatened and knocked around this past couple of years
Mm.
with all these book bans and everything.
Yeah.
But I think that's true for teachers, for administrators, for school counselors, school librarians. If you live in Florida and you're in the educational system, at least in some parts of Florida, I don't know what it's like everywhere, but certainly in our county, it feels like you're under attack. You just get the feeling that people are angry with you and critical of you and that you're doing bad things to
Right.
children.
Well, and I
And
think they're easy prey, I think, because it's easy when you look at, you want to look at the rankings for education. We kind of talked about that a little bit last time.
Mhm.
Or you talk about how students behave, or you talk about, there's lots of things that we talk about, but anytime the discussion is about someone, say, between the age of 5 and 18,
Right,
um, the one of the first things that people focus on is the school.
right, right.
All of those kids are presumably in school, and for that reason, as you said, teachers, administrators, school faculty and school staff in general are all easy targets because they don't have a lot of protection. They don't have a lot of. They may have a teacher union, but sometimes in some areas those teacher unions don't have
Yeah,
a lot
they
of
don't have power.
pull, and so we end up in situations where teachers who are just people also, just so
Let's
everybody
let's
knows,
not let's not forget.
they're just people,
Mhm.
where they're not allowed to have opinions about certain things. They can't, some people can go on social media and post whatever they want to post about whatever they want to post about.
Mhm.
Yes, there's consequences to that, of course, but they want to post whatever they want to. But, following we talked a little bit about the unfortunate situation that of Charlie Kirk's murder,
Right.
assassination. Teachers in our district, our county, teachers were told that they are not allowed to post or say anything about it. So
Even on their private social
even on
media.
their private social media,
And the Supreme Court has been very clear about that a teacher does not give up the First Amendment simply because of their job.
right,
Despite that Supreme Court ruling, teachers were threatened with losing their certification
right,
if they made any comments at all, especially negative comments about the murder. I'm not even, no, we all agree that the murder was horrific and should not have happened. But to say to a person, you're not allowed to say anything,
right,
and if you do, we're going to take your license, we're going to take your certification, we're going to make it impossible for you to teach. Um, these were not people talking to classes about their opinions. They were expressing themselves in private social media accounts. But this is the most recent example of teachers being intimidated and threatened by the authorities for expressing their First Amendment rights. That has a chilling effect
right,
on everybody. But it
absolutely,
didn't start with the Charlie Kirk murder. I mean, teachers were threatened with No Child Left Behind.
right,
If you don't do these things, we're going to give you less money. We're going to cut your pay. We'll threaten your certification. You'll lose your job if you don't do all of these things. No Child Left Behind had that baked into it. And since then, this notion of authority and has led to threats of now it has morphed into threats of litigation.
Hmm.
Now teachers fear that they're going to be sued for
Right.
something that they say or do. A threat of investigation. I don't know whether most of our listeners are aware of this, but all a student has to do is make a complaint.
Right.
Doesn't have to be specific, just a complaint,
Right.
and that will trigger a Board of Education inquiry investigation of which the teacher has no control.
And just to be clear, folks, you think, well, of course, if something happens and a student is abused or something happens, that of course the student should just make a report and
Right.
the teacher gets investigated. No, what we're talking about with making a report, that report can be as benign and vague as the teacher embarrassed me.
Right. That's right.
And you might say, no. I have seen letters from the state written to teachers who
Hmm.
said it is alleged that you embarrassed a student in the class, and so this is being investigated for embarrassing.
Or I don't feel safe in her classroom.
Right, right.
All it takes.
And it doesn't have to be specific to trigger
No.
the investigation. Now, the less specific it is, of course, the less likely it is that the teach something will be done to the teacher. But it
Mhm.
doesn't change the fact that the teacher is under investigation, is getting, you know, is it's being communicated to them. This is what can happen if you are found guilty. This is what can happen to your livelihood, to your certification, to your job, if this is found to be true. It doesn't change the stress and all of that the teacher is going through, and all the while they're still expected to teach.
And we don't know anything about this teacher. So the teacher gets accused. I don't feel safe, or she embarrassed me, or he said something that I found offensive. Um, that teacher is also a human,
Right.
also has emotions, maybe has a family, maybe
Hmm.
has medical conditions, maybe is taking care of a relative.
Right.
These are people, these educators that we criticize so readily and accuse and trigger investigations. They are also people with
Right.
feelings and families.
Absolutely.
And we forget about that. So this is always hanging over every teacher's head is the threat of litigation, threat of an investigation. What if that teacher went out and had to hire an attorney?
Right.
That little comment by a student who was embarrassed can cost a teacher two or three or $4,000
Right.
because they have to hire an attorney to protect themselves. So we've created this climate where school personnel, teachers, librarians, administrators have become very, very easy targets
Hmm.
to threaten, to intimidate. Okay. Um, the problem is that while all that's going on, teachers and administrators clearly have very little authority to do
Well,
anything about it.
right. So again, just painting the picture clearly, you have that risk there. We had a case here in Florida where a teacher, I think she lost her job because she showed a movie at the end of the school year,
She did.
an animated Disney movie. She showed the Disney movie in class, and there was some new procedure that she was supposed to follow, and apparently she didn't follow that. But one of the parents complained because she showed this Disney movie, and she lost her job. I
Yeah.
believe she lost her job for showing a movie. So you have those threats and those risks there. You can't have a classroom library anymore unless you have every book examined by the district to make sure that every book in the classroom library is
Right.
approved.
Mhm.
Um, those risks, you still have to teach. You have to teach all the material and make sure that students do as well as they can on these tests
Right.
that are going to be used to evaluate the teacher, the administration, and the school and the school district. And all the while, they have no authority. They are at constant risk of someone else coming in and saying, "Sorry, you're not doing a good enough job."
Right. That's right. And also now in today's climate, in addition to not having support, we teachers, you can have a teachers union, but it can't do very much. The teachers unions, they're not allowed to strike. It's a state law in Florida that teachers cannot strike. So they have no muscle like that. Um, but you have very little protection. And in fact, you can be challenged. You can be challenged by parents. Parents can come in and challenge you. And you can be challenged by parent groups, Moms for Liberty, the perfect example of a very vocal, and they're popular among politicians, is Moms for Liberty, and they'll come in and they'll challenge you. And you can be challenged by students.
That's the big one to me.
People may not know this, but students can, in whatever language they want to use, can
And what
challenge
I
the teacher.
right, and I think that this is how the progression has happened. As we have empowered parents, and again, you know, let's not lose the reality that it is good for parents to be involved with education. It is good for parents and teachers to collaborate. We've known this for
Right.
100 years that the most ideal situation is when parents and teachers have good collaboration,
Hmm.
which is different than parents making the decisions.
Exactly.
It is different than the parents being able to go in and say, no, I don't want my kid learning from that textbook or from that curriculum or in that school. I
Mhm.
want them to do something different. That's very different than them working collaboratively.
Right.
But what has happened is that when we've given parents so much control and
Mhm.
power, what that then trickles down to is the students are now have all that authority and power. So you can have students who can, and I don't even know that I would say that students are necessary, that all of the students are necessarily lying, but a student could come home and tell their parent a story about what happened. The consistency of their story with what really happened may or may not be,
Right.
100%. But then the parent can go and then enact. And Richard, I have seen it when I worked in the schools. I saw it so many times that the parents would come in and confront a teacher about something that the student said. This teacher will say, "No, this is how it happened." And the teacher and the parent will say, "No, I believe my kid. I don't believe you.
Right. That's right.
You're just trying to get out of being in
Uh,
trouble, or you're trying to get out of consequences." What that it's like I don't even have words for now the teacher has lost first they lost all their power to politicians, then they lost all their power to the parents. Now they're losing their power to 12-year-olds.
Right. Right.
It it makes no sense when you really break it down like that.
Mhm. And that wouldn't happen at a school like Jesuit or those big private schools in Tampa that have such great reputations. That sort of thing wouldn't happen there.
Right.
You don't have that. So um, what we've done is we have and the title of these podcasts, this two-part podcast, was Has the Pendulum Swung Too Far? We talked about that at the beginning of the first podcast. And we believe that it has because when you put parents in charge, and DeSantis is famous for saying, well, these parents should be in charge of their kids' education because they know more. Sounds good. But when you put the parent in charge, you're taking authority from the teacher, giving it to the parent, but you're also giving that authority to the student.
And I wish when something like that is said, parents know best, they should be putting. I wish that someone would say, no, they don't,
Right. Right.
because they don't.
They
Again,
know
we
what.
said this in the last podcast. You and I have taught, we have worked in schools, we have taught at the college and university level.
Yeah.
We know education. I don't know more about teaching a kid algebra than my kid's algebra teacher.
Right.
I
Right.
don't I don't know more. I
Yeah.
don't know more about teaching history than their history teacher or civics or English.
And I don't know more than the librarian about what books should be in the library. If
Right,
the librarian says these are the best titles, I'm going to trust her to make that decision.
right.
I'm not going to. second guess her, and I'm not going to tell her how to do her job any
Right.
more than I would tell my dentist or my radiologist or anybody else how to do their job. Okay?
Right. So again, it's created this imbalance of power
Hmm.
where students and parents, and I put them in that order because usually when there's a problem, it's because the student, you know, feels like the teacher is disrespecting them. Oftentimes that means that the teacher has an expectation that the student can't or doesn't want to meet,
Right.
just to
Hmm.
be honest.
Right.
They think that the assignment is stupid. They criticize the teacher because of something, or they feel that the teacher is criticizing them.
Right.
And everything is blamed on the teacher. I have an F in my class because the teacher doesn't know how to teach.
Right. That's right.
Let's never mind that the teacher has been teaching for 20 years
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
has a long history of teaching students,
Right.
but for some reason, suddenly this year, this teacher doesn't know how to teach.
Right. There was a famous cartoon a few years ago where the kid brought home a bad grade and the kid got in trouble.
Right,
And that was like 1980. And now in 2025, if a kid has a bad grade, they go in and attack the teacher.
right.
It's not the kid. And sadly, the cartoon was sort of true. Um, yeah, everything is the teacher's fault, whether it's a low grade, and this whole idea about she's being mean to me, and or I'm being traumatized, or I don't feel safe because my teacher's so mean to me, my teacher disrespects me.
Mhm.
Um, Bernie, how many times have you had young children, elementary, middle school age? Well, if my teacher doesn't respect me, I don't have any obligation to respect him.
I have a second grader who says that right now. A second grader, seven
Right,
years old, who says, "Well, she disrespects me. I'm going to disrespect her."
right.
What are you talking about?
Where,
She's giving you vocabulary words to learn.
right.
Like, what is she doing? What do you think? What is respect? What do you even mean by that?
That's
And,
right.
and by that, that means when I say I don't want to do something, you should make it to where I don't have to do it.
Right.
That's
That's right.
being
You shouldn't
disrespectful.
argue with me and you shouldn't make me feel bad and you shouldn't be critical.
Right.
Um, so the thing about public schools is, let's keep in mind, public schools are they that different from public parks or public playgrounds or public highways? You don't make the rules in all those places.
Right.
So why do you have this right? The other thing is that your child, take a middle school. Your student is in a middle school for 3 years.
Hmm.
There are teachers who have been at that middle school for 25 years,
Right.
which means they were there many years before you. They'll be there many years after you. They know what's best. They know how to do this. Okay. You're only there for 3 years and then you're going on to another school.
Right.
Okay. Let the people who know how to do this, let them do their jobs.
Right.
Don't threaten them. Don't second guess them. Don't tell them how to do things. I can't tell my kids' teachers how to teach.
I
They
would.
know more about that than I do.
Right. And again, remember that the teacher's job is to teach all children, not
Right.
just yours.
Hmm.
They teach them with an age appropriate curriculum. We
Hmm.
have I know we've done a podcast a long time ago over the idea that, you know, education when you're thinking about what kids learn,
Hmm.
we're making that decision based upon a lot of data collected over a long period of time around the country. We know
Right.
that sixth graders should be doing this kind of work.
Hmm. Hmm.
Why, and they should be learning this kind of material. Why would we come in and say, no, I don't think it's appropriate for my sixth grader to learn that?
Right. I think they should
Grader in
learn
the world
these,
is learning that, but yours doesn't need to learn that for some reason.
or I want her to learn these 7 things, but I don't want her to learn these 4 things.
Right.
This is not how it works. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. So we educate all children. That's the challenge with universal. If you're going to educate everybody, you educate everybody. What you teach is based on what experts know is an age-appropriate curriculum.
Right.
You don't teach algebra in third grade.
Right.
You don't teach physics in eighth grade. These are subjects that require a certain cognitive ability that The brain matures over time, and then you can do these subjects. Somebody has to make the decision about what is taught at a particular grade level.
Right.
Now, if you say this is what we teach in fourth grade,
Right.
third grade, fifth grade, that means that in a group of 20 students, some of them are going to be bored
Hmm.
because they know a lot of the material, and some of them are going to struggle
Hmm.
because they have learning problems,
Right.
right? Most will get it. Most of the kids will get it, but you're going to have some kids who are bored and some kids who are challenged. When parents say, my child is bored and it's up to the school to keep him challenged, now you're talking about individualizing the curriculum.
Hmm.
Once again, I love the idea of individualizing the curriculum. But if you do that, you're going to need more teachers and more staff.
Right.
And we
That's
don't,
exactly it. Like we put teachers in this position of, creating individualized,
Mhm.
lessons and everything, but they have in a good classroom, they have 20 students. In some classrooms, they have 30 students.
Right,
That could mean 30 different, individualized approaches to teach something.
right.
And well, could be a different podcast, but let's just be honest. Most people learn the way that people learn. It's not like this person learns this way. We've disproved learning styles a long time ago, and I know that's going to shock a lot of people.
Nobody believes that,
Yeah,
but it's true.
but that has been disproven for a very long time.
Mhm.
There aren't kinesthetic learners, there aren't auditory learners and visual learners. Everybody learns in pretty much the same way.
Right.
Now, there may be things that happen that make it more difficult for people to learn. I mean, that's where learning disabilities come from and everything like that. But a teacher should not be in a position where he or she has to create multiple
Mhm.
ways to teach the same material with
Right.
the idea that this person's going to get it this way and that person's going to get it that way. It's just not reality. But it
Right.
puts so much pressure again on the teacher.
Yeah. So
And we need to reduce that
right.
stress.
Right. This is how it has to work, and we cannot individualize it. Well, we could, but you'd have to add many more
Mhm.
teachers, much more staff, many more materials. This all costs money. It's all doable. It just costs a lot of money.
Mhm.
And the people who are criticizing what's going on in schools are also the people who say we should cut taxes. Well, taxes fund the public schools,
Right,
and you can't have both. You can't have, if you want a Mercedes, you got to pay for a Mercedes.
right,
If you want a used Corolla, you can't put together a Mercedes-Benz curriculum when all you want to do is make a payment for a used Corolla. I
right,
mean, that's what people are asking for. I want to do this cheaply, but I want to do it. I want to build a Rolls Royce. Well, I'll give you a Rolls Royce, but you're going to pay for a Rolls Royce.
right.
Okay. Can't have it both ways. So finally, our 2 cents.
Mhm.
Uh, one of the one of the things that struck us as we were talking to teachers and talking to each other about this, the conundrum that we're facing is that education is based on criticizing your work and approving your work to say, yes, this is of quality. Okay. Kids don't want to be criticized.
I was just going to say, the idea that there's all these new diagnoses and new ways to think about things, but at some point, kids have to be able to accept the reality that what they do isn't perfect, and that they make mistakes, and that they are often, I'm going to use the word often, they are often wrong. They have to be able to accept someone saying, that's not what I asked you to do, or that's not right, or that isn't what I,
You didn't do the assignment.
and you have to be able to accept that consequence. I'm sorry. There is nowhere else in life, at no
Yeah.
other point in your life, is it true that you can do whatever you want to do, and whoever it is just going to accept it.
Right. That's right.
It is not the teacher's privilege for you to be in that classroom.
Right.
And so
That's
you have to, as a student, you have to be able to accept the fact that there's going to be times when you're wrong and you're going to have to be redirected. Now, obviously, we're not talking about teachers like intentionally trying to insult kids and treat them poor. We're of course not talking about that.
Right.
And let's be honest, the vast majority, vast majority of teachers would never do that. You know,
Hmm.
they don't, teachers don't become teachers because they want to insult kids.
No.
Let's just be
Mhm.
honest.
No.
Are there some that maybe need a little bit better social skills? Maybe, but the vast majority don't. But come on, parents, kids have to be able to accept the fact that they're not right a lot of the time.
Right. That's right. And it is our job to be critical
Yeah.
and to say, no, you didn't do the assignment. You didn't do what was assigned. You didn't meet expectations. You know what they are. You didn't meet them. And they have,
I told this story before. I just want to throw this out there because this is what it leads to. I told this story before. I taught it. I was teaching a graduate level. Graduate level. These are people going to get their master's degree. A graduate
Mhm.
level counseling course, and the students had to write papers. And this woman wrote a paper, and it was a C. And that was being somewhat generous. I gave her a C for the paper because it wasn't very well written for a variety of reasons. I gave her lots of feedback about it. I got a call from her mother. She was a graduate student for going for a master's degree. I got a call from her mother. Of course, I didn't talk to her, but when I talked to the student, again, I was like, why is your mom calling me about this?
Right.
Oh, I was talking to her and she didn't think it was very fair. Write a better paper. You know,
Right.
I gave you feedback, so the next
Mhm.
paper that you write a better paper.
Mhm.
Articulate your word. Use complete sentences.
Yeah.
Don't use abbreviations. Those are
Right.
things that and but when we try to let kids believe that they're going to always be right, and anytime somebody tells them, is critical about something, parents are going to go in and save them. We end up with adults who can't handle the fact that sometimes your work is a C level.
Right.
That's just reality.
And when parents are dealing with children in this ideal system where kids pay attention to teachers and acknowledge that the teacher knows more and they acknowledge that they have to do the work that's assigned, your child is not a possession. Parents, um, frequently parents will come in and say, these are my children.
Hmm.
I get to decide. Now, they're not, they're not a possession.
Right.
Your children are a responsibility,
Hmm.
not a possession.
Right.
Um, and I hear this all the time, especially new parents, and they're saying, no, this is my child. This is how it's going to. No, it's not your child. It is a child, but it is your responsibility to raise this person responsibly.
Right. And this is why this is such a such a big difference in that those semantics. This is my computer.
Hmm.
This is my belonging, my computer. I am responsible for everything on this computer. I am
Right,
responsible for my search history. I am responsible for what's downloaded on it. I am responsible for this. And if something is on there that shouldn't be on there,
mhm,
I am held accountable for that.
right,
Your children are not your possession because they make their own decisions.
right,
They do things independent of you, whether you like it or not.
right.
Whether
Eventually,
that's
they're
what I
going to.
taught them to do or not. So
Right.
if they go to school and they say bad words,
Hmm.
well, my kid would never say that. Well, maybe your kid did,
Right, right.
because you don't it's not a computer where it's just
Mhm.
download and it doesn't know anything more than what you put on it.
Right.
Kids will do some of those things. So
Mhm.
your kid is not a possession. Your kid is an independent, sentient being that's
Right.
going to make their own decisions.
That's right. And they might say something that you don't
Yeah.
approve. So you can't come and say, my child would never do that. Your child might do
Work in a
that.
middle
Okay.
school. Work in a middle
You're
school.
not going to know. Right. And eventually they will. So it would be great if parents would change their thinking from this is my possession, I
Mhm.
control it, to this is my responsibility and I have to do this well and I have to do it carefully. What we would ask parents to do is rather than um, absolving your child, rather than rescuing your child, rather than saving your child, rather than unconditionally believing your child over everybody else in the world. Your responsibility is to teach your child to face and then overcome challenges,
Right,
not to rescue them from the challenges, but teach them how to face that you got to face your consequences. You made
right,
a mistake, you didn't do the work, you got to deal with that.
right,
I'm not gonna save you from that.
right,
Okay. I'm not going to rescue you from that. You did this, you'll learn that there will be consequences for doing that.
right.
But in order for that to work, a teacher has to have the authority to do that.
It
If
all comes
anybody
back to
takes
that.
that authority, if parents take it, if administrators take it, if elected officials take that authority, this whole thing is going to break down.
Absolutely. And there's lots of other real world examples of that, whether you look at sports and, if you don't practice, you don't play, period. That's just the way that it should be. And of course, we have parents who are overly involved with that too, who go in to tell coaches what can happen and what can't happen. But, if you don't go to work, you don't get paid. These are just the realities of things because we have obligations. And when a student goes to school, the student is responsible for their behavior, for their performance at school. And when parents get involved and create a culture where students think that, well, if there's anything that I don't like, all I have to do is say something to my mom or dad, and they will go in and heads will roll.
Right. Right.
Students, yes, that has been said. I've heard a student say, well, I'll tell my mom and dad, and then heads will roll.
Right. Right. Right.
Now, you know that that's a phrase that they heard from the parent because that is not a phrase that most elementary or middle school kids know. So you
Hmm.
know that they heard that from their parents.
Right.
So the
Hmm.
parents are encouraging this.
Right.
So please, parents, back off. Let the school do what the school does so
Right.
that they can teach all kids.
That's right. People often say, well, the magnet schools are better. Okay. Okay. Magnet schools are better. What is one of the primary differences in magnet schools? Magnet schools work. Parents don't challenge magnet schools. Parents don't challenge the curriculum. They don't challenge it because they want their children to be there
Right,
because there are rules and the adults are in charge
right,
and the kids don't get to make all the decisions.
right,
Well, if it works in a magnet school, then it'll work in any school. So
right.
don't take power away from the people who know how to do this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Ugh.
We will, yeah. We feel strongly. I don't know if anybody could tell that. We
Well, I just have such respect for teachers. Their job is so difficult, and it's made more difficult
hmm
by these
Yeah.
people who talk about it's woke
And we're
and
just going to keep losing more and more teachers, more and more good teachers
the
because
best teachers are going to leave. They're going to go elsewhere. So,
absolutely. So, all right. Well, that's it for today. Just folks, be mindful. That's all we can say. So,
please.
until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.